Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, dear listener, a fire so massive people could not even stand near it. The heat was unbearable. The flames roared into the sky, rising higher and higher as if trying to touch the heavens themselves. Sparks flew through the air. The ground around it burned. Even from a distance, people covered their faces, stepping back, afraid of its intensity. And yet, they were not afraid of what they were about to do. Crowds gathered, men, women, leaders, followers, all watching, some with anger in their eyes, some with satisfaction, others with silence, but no one stepped forward to stop it. Because this was not just a fire, this was a message, a warning, a display of power. They believed this fire would end everything. They believed this would silence the one man who dared to challenge them, the one man who stood against their beliefs, their traditions, their authority, Ibrahim AS, a single man against an entire nation. And now they were ready to destroy him. But this was no ordinary execution. They didn't just want him gone. They wanted an example, so they built something terrifying. The fire was prepared for days. Some narrations mention that people contributed to it, each bringing wood, feeding the flames, making it bigger, stronger, more destructive. The fire grew until it became impossible to approach. No one could get close enough. No one could stand near it. So they created something else, a machine, a way to throw him into it from a distance, because even they feared the fire they had created. Think about that. They built something so powerful that they themselves could not control it, yet they believed it would destroy him. Now imagine the moment. Ibrahim AS is brought forward, surrounded, no escape, no ally, no support, just faces watching, waiting. What would you feel at that moment? Fear, panic, desperation? Because this was not just death. This was a death designed to break you, to burn you, to erase you. And yet something was different. There was no panic, no desperation, no visible fear, because Ibrahim AS was not looking at the fire. He was looking beyond it. This is what most people don't understand. The test was not the fire. The test was what came before it. The pressure, the isolation, the moment where everything around you tells you, give up, stop, just agree, and this will all end. But he didn't. He stood firm, and now he stood alone. The ropes were tightened, the machine was prepared, the fire roared louder as if waiting, the people stepped back. Everything was ready, and in that moment, silence fell. Not outside, but inside. Because when every external support disappears, something deeper is revealed. Either fear takes over or faith does, and Ibrahim AS chose faith. But what happened next was not what anyone expected. Because before the fire could consume him, before the flames could reach him, before the plan could be completed, something unseen had already begun, something far more powerful than anything they had built. Because while they were preparing the fire, Allah was preparing something else. And what happened inside that fire was not destruction. It was something the world would never forget. Long before the fire was lit, the real battle had already begun. It was not a battle of weapons. It was not a battle of strength. It was a battle of truth. Ibrahim AS was born into a society where falsehood was normal. Idols stood everywhere. People bowed to things they had made with their own hands. Traditions were followed without question. Generations had lived and died believing the same things, without ever asking why. And in the middle of all this, one man began to think. He looked at the idols, stone, wood, silent. They could not speak, they could not move, they could not help anyone, yet people worshipped them with complete devotion, and something inside him refused to accept it. So he questioned, not with arrogance, but with clarity. How can you worship what you create? A simple question, but a dangerous one. Because when truth challenges tradition, people feel threatened. At first they ignored him, then they mocked him, then they became angry, because his words were not just questions, they were exposing something, the emptiness behind their beliefs. and the more he spoke, the more uncomfortable they became. This is what happens when truth enters a place built on falsehood. It shakes everything. Now imagine standing in that environment. Everyone around you believes the same thing. Your family, your community, your leaders, and you stand alone. No support, no agreement, just resistance. Would you continue, or would you stay quiet, just to avoid conflict? This was his test, and he did not step back. Instead, he took it further. One day, when the people left for their gathering, he went to the place where the idols were kept. He looked at them, all lined up, decorated, respected, fears. And then he did something no one expected. He broke them, one by one, until nothing remained except the largest one. And when the people returned, everything changed. Shock, anger, chaos. Who did this? And the answer came back to one name, Ibrahim. They brought him forward, surrounded him, questioned him. Did you do this to our gods? And in that moment he did not defend himself the way they expected. He pointed to the largest idol. Ask it. Silence. Because they knew. They knew the truth. They knew those idols could not speak, could not respond, could not do anything. For a moment, their hearts felt it. The realization, the truth they had ignored for so long. But instead of accepting it, they rejected it. Because accepting the truth would mean admitting they were wrong. And that was harder than denying it. So their anger grew stronger than before, because now it was not just about belief, it was about ego, about pride, about control. And this is what happens when truth threatens power. It is no longer debated, it is attacked. And that is exactly what they chose. They didn't want to listen, they didn't want to understand, they wanted to silence him completely. Because one man with truth was stronger than all of them, and they knew it. So they made a decision, not to argue, not to reflect, but to destroy. And when a society reaches that point, it does not matter how clear the truth is. They will choose falsehood just to protect themselves. Now pause and reflect. How different is that from today? How often do people follow something just because everyone else does? How often is truth ignored because it is uncomfortable? How often are those who speak truth pushed away, mocked, or silenced? Because the story of Ibrahim a.s. is not just history. It is a pattern that repeats in every generation. And the real question is, if you were in his place, would you stand firm? Or would you blend in, just to stay safe? Because standing alone is not easy, but it is where real faith is proven. And as his words shook their beliefs, as his actions exposed their reality, the people reached a point where there was only one thing left to do. If they could not defeat the truth, they would destroy the one who carried it. And that is when the decision was made, not just to punish him, but to burn him alive. Once the truth was exposed, everything changed. This was no longer about idols. It was no longer about debate. It became something deeper, something more dangerous. It became about pride, because when people realize they are wrong, they face two choices: accept the truth or protect their ego, and most people choose their ego. The crowd stood there, shaken for a moment. They knew the idols could not speak. They knew Ibrahim a.s. was right. But instead of surrendering to that truth, something inside them resisted. A refusal, stubbornness, a need to hold on to what they had always believed. And slowly, that resistance turned into anger. Because truth does something powerful. It doesn't just challenge your beliefs, it challenges your identity. It forces you to admit that everything you built your life on might be wrong. And that is not easy. So instead of accepting it, they rejected him completely. Voices began to rise, shouting, blaming, accusing. He has insulted our gods. He has disrespected our traditions. But beneath all of that there was fear. Fear of losing control, fear of losing influence, fear that if one person could break their system, others might follow. And that is when the decision was made, not quietly, not secretly, but openly, publicly. Burn him. Think about that. Not exile, not punishment, not imprisonment, but fire. A death so extreme, so painful, so unforgettable that it would send a message to everyone. This is what happens if you challenge us. And once that decision was made, there was no turning back. The entire society became involved. People gathered wood, day after day, bringing more, adding more, feeding the flames before they even began. It became an event, a mission, a shared purpose, to destroy one man. And the fire grew, larger, stronger, more intense, until it reached a point where no one could even approach it. The heat alone pushed people back. The flames roared like something alive, uncontrollable, unstoppable. And yet, they continued, because when anger takes over, logic disappears. They built something so powerful that even they could not control it, but they believed it would serve them. Now imagine the contrast. On one side, an entire nation, angry, united, determined. On the other, one man, calm, silent, firm. No army, no protection, no escape, only faith. This is what makes this moment so powerful, because the situation looked completely one-sided. There was no visible way out, no human solution, no chance of survival. And this is where most people break. When the pressure becomes too much, when the odds are impossible, when everything points toward failure, that is when fear takes over. That is when people give up. That is when they compromise. But Ibrahim alayhi salam did not. He did not beg. He did not change his words. He did not step back. Because his strength did not come from the situation. It came from his connection with Allah. And that is something no fire can touch. Now think about your own life. How often do you feel pressure and immediately look for a way out? How often do you compromise just to avoid discomfort? How often do you step back because standing firm feels too difficult? Because your fire may not look like this, it may not be physical, but it exists in different forms: pressure, fear, loss, uncertainty, and in those moments you are faced with the same choice. Do you hold on, or do you let go? Because the real test is not when things are easy, it is when everything becomes difficult. And as the fire reached its peak, as the people stepped back, as the final moment approached, something incredible was about to happen. Because while they believed they were in control, they had no idea that the outcome had already been decided. And what happened next was beyond anything they could imagine. Now the moment had arrived. Everything was ready. The fire was raging, louder than ever, flames rising high into the sky, burning with a force no one could stand near. The heat pushed people far back. Even those who built it feared it, and in front of it stood Ibrahim alayhi salam, bound, surrounded, alone. No one stepped forward to help him. No one spoke in his defense. The same people he called toward truth now stood watching, waiting for him to be destroyed. This was the final moment. The ropes were tightened, the machine they built prepared. Because the fire was too powerful to approach, they had no choice but to launch him into it. Think about that. They created something so destructive they could not even carry out their own plan directly, and yet they believed it would end him. Now imagine being in his place, looking at that fire, hearing the roar of the flames, feeling the heat even from a distance, knowing that in a few moments you will be thrown into it. What would go through your mind? Fear, regret, doubt? Because this is where most people would break. This is where the heart begins to shake. This is where certainty fades, but not for Ibrahim alayhi salam. Because while everyone around him saw fire, he saw something else. He saw Allah. This is what made him different. His focus was not on what was in front of him, but on who was in control of it. As he was placed into the device, as the people stepped back, as the moment became real, something happened, not outside, but inside. A calm, a certainty, a complete trust that no matter what happens, Allah is enough. And this is where the level of his faith becomes clear. He did not ask for the fire to stop. He did not ask for escape. He did not ask for the situation to change. He simply relied on Allah, completely, fully, without hesitation. Because true tawakkul is not about controlling the outcome, it is about trusting the one who controls it. And then the moment came. He was released, thrown into the fire, from a distance, into something no human could survive. The crowd watched, waiting, expecting flames, expecting destruction, expecting the end. But something else was already happening. Something they could not see, something beyond their understanding, because at that exact moment, a command was given, not from the people, not from the fire, but from Allah, a command that would change everything, be cool and safe upon Ibrahim. Think about that. The fire did not disappear, the flames did not stop, the heat did not vanish. But its nature changed, because the one who created it has complete control over it. And in that moment, what was meant to destroy him lost its power. Now imagine the scene. From the outside, the fire is still burning, still intense, still terrifying, but inside there is no pain, no burning, no fear, only peace, only protection, only safety, because when Allah protects you, nothing else can harm you. And when Allah tests you, nothing else can save you. This is the reality most people forget. They look at the fire, but they forget who controls the fire. They look at the problem, but they forget who controls the outcome. And this is why Ibrahim alayhi salam did not fear, because his trust was not in the situation, it was in Allah. Now bring this back to your life. When you face something difficult, where does your focus go? To the problem? Or to Allah? Do you panic, or do you trust? Because your reaction reveals your level of faith. And this moment, this exact moment, is what defines everything. Not the fire, but the heart inside the fire. And as the flames continued to burn, as the people watched in shock, what they saw next would change everything they believed. Because the one they tried to destroy was not destroyed at all. The flames continued to rise. From the outside, nothing had changed. The fire still roared. The heat still pushed people back. The sky above it shimmered from its intensity. The crowd stood at a distance, shielding their faces, waiting for what they believed was inevitable. They expected screams. They expected movement. They expected signs of burning, of pain, of destruction. But there was nothing, no sound, no struggle, no sign that anything had happened at all. At first, confusion spread. People looked at each other. What is happening? How is this possible? Because a fire like that does not stay silent. It consumes, it destroys, it leaves nothing behind. But this fire was different, because its command had changed, not by human hands, but by Allah. Be coolness and safety upon Ibrahim. And with that command, everything shifted. The fire still existed, the flames still moved, but its purpose was removed. It no longer burned. It no longer harmed me. It no longer had control. Now imagine what it felt like inside, not heat, not pain, but peace. A place that was meant to destroy became a place of safety, a space filled with calm, where fear should have been overwhelming. This is what divine protection looks like. Not always the removal of the test, but the transformation of it. Because Allah did not stop the fire, He changed it. And that is a lesson most people miss. They ask for their problems to disappear. But sometimes Allah allows the situation to remain and changes how it affects you. From the outside, nothing looks different, but inside, everything has changed. Now the people began to realize something was wrong, or rather, something was beyond their control. They watched, waited, and then they saw him, Ibrahim alayhi salam, alive, untouched, standing within the very fire they believed would destroy him, no burns, no fear, no sign of harm. At that moment, everything they believed collapsed. Their power, their plan, their certainty, all of it meant nothing, because the one they tried to destroy was protected by something they could not see. And this is where the truth becomes undeniable. No matter how strong something looks, no matter how powerful it seems, it is still under the control of Allah. Fire burns because Allah allows it. It destroys because Allah permits it, and the moment that permission is removed, it becomes nothing. This is the reality they failed to understand. They relied on what they could see, on what they believed was certain, but they forgot that everything they depended on was already controlled by Allah. Now think about your own life. How often do you fear something because it looks powerful? A situation, a problem, a loss, something that feels overwhelming, uncontrollable, impossible to escape. And in that moment, your focus goes to the size of the fire. But what if you shifted your focus? What if instead of looking at the problem, you looked at the one who controls it? Because the lesson here is not just about a miracle, it is about perspective. The fire did not become weak. Ibrahim AS did not become stronger. Allah simply changed reality, and when Allah changes something, nothing can go against it. This is why true trust is not based on what you see, it is based on who you believe in. Because when your trust is in Allah, even the impossible becomes possible. Even the danger becomes safe. Even the fire becomes cool. And this is what shook the people the most. Not just that he survived, but how he survived. Without effort, without resistance, without fear. Because his reliance was never on himself, it was always on Allah. And that is the difference. Some people face problems and are consumed by them. Others face the same problems and are protected within them, not because the situation is different, but because their connection with Allah is different. So ask yourself honestly, when you face your fire, what do you rely on? Your strength, your solutions, your control, or Allah? Because that answer determines everything. And this is where the story goes deeper, because the fire was never the main point. It was only a moment, a sign, a demonstration. The real lesson was something most people still miss, something far more important than the miracle itself, something that explains why this happened and what it means for you. Now step back and look at the entire story again. A man stands alone, a nation turns against him. A fire is built to destroy him, and in the end he walks out untouched. At first glance, it feels like a story about a miracle, about fire not burning, about divine protection, about something extraordinary that happened long ago. But if that's all you see, then you've missed the most important part. Because the real lesson is not the fire, it is what happened before the fire. It is the heart that stood firm when everything around it collapsed. Ibrahim AS was not saved because of the fire. He was saved because of his faith, because long before he was thrown into the flames, he had already made his decision to stand for truth, to reject falsehood, to choose Allah, no matter the cost. And that is what most people overlook. They focus on the outcome but ignore the process. They want the miracle but avoid the sacrifice. They want protection but struggle with commitment. Now bring this back to your life. You may never face a fire like that, but you will face your own versions of it. Moments where you are pressured to compromise, moments where standing firm feels difficult, moments where choosing what is right feels like losing everything. That is your fire. And in those moments, the question is not whether the situation will change. The question is, will you remain firm? Because Ibrahim AS did not know what would happen. He did not know the fire would become cool. He did not know he would walk out unharmed. He only knew one thing: Allah is enough, and that was enough for him. This is what true tawakkul looks like, not trusting because you know the outcome, but trusting even when you don't, because most people say they trust Allah until things become difficult, until the pressure increases, until the fire gets closer. Then suddenly, doubt appears, fear grows, and trust weakens. But real faith is revealed in those moments, when everything around you says, this is too much, this is impossible, there is no way out, and you still say, Allah is enough for me. Now think about this deeply. If Ibrahim alayhi salam had compromised just once, if he had stayed silent, just to avoid conflict, if he had agreed, just to stay safe, there would be no fire. But there would also be no honor, no legacy, no story that inspires millions until today. Because the miracle did not make him great, his faith did. The fire only revealed it. And this is the part most people miss. Your test is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to reveal you, to show what is inside your heart, to show what you truly rely on, to show who you really are when everything is taken away. So don't just admire this story. Understand it, live it, because your moment will come, your test will appear, your fire will stand in front of you, and in that moment you will either react with fear or respond with faith, and that choice will define everything. Because the fire did not change, the situation did not change. What changed was the connection between a servant and his Lord, and when that connection is strong, nothing else matters. Not the fire, not the people, not the outcome, only Allah. So ask yourself one last time, when your moment comes, will you be ready? Or will you wait until it is too late to build the faith you needed? Because the truth is, the fire was never the real test. You are.